Zimmer frames are not funny. He challenged any of his erstwhile peers to make them so, on stage, in front of 1,000 people in an auditorium, without resorting to some lame pratfall clown routine. And not that any of his peers could rise to such an arthritically thrown gauntlet now, since he had outlived the lot, seen them all die for that crowning time both on and off stage. Whatever the manner of their exit stage left, the final curtain had come down on them all, ceding the ground to all those young Turk comedians with their observational comedy. Jesus wept, and then hopefully, rather than turning the other cheek, heckled them and maybe threw a pint glass for good measure. Have you ever noticed how all supermarket trolleys seem to have 3 wheels pointing in one direction, and yet the 4th is in the completely opposite direction? The only thing cutting edge about that gag is it makes the audience want to slit their wrists. A joke about how many gears an Italian tank has, on the other hand. Observational comedy was so damn cosy and self-congratulatory. The comedian going, "Look at me, aren't I clever for noticing this everyday thing?" And the audience recognising it and sharing in some sort of community with the so-called comedian. Yet there's no joke to be in on together. Just a bland, unremarkable statement of the obvious. You want an observation about everyday life? Ageing is a bastard. See, not funny at all. The punchline is 4, by the way. All of them reverse. Tears of a clown? Don't you credit it for 1 second. There's none more competitive than a bunch of gagmeisters. A funnymen take their rivalry extremely seriously. There may be no disputing which name is the headline act, seeing as it appears in the biggest print. But those on the bill below will contest whose stage entrance garnered the loudest cheer, who was called for the most or the longest encores, each with an imaginary clapometer in their head to back up their claim. Who wouldn't punch the air and bellow a satisfied yes when it's their own one-liner or punchline that went into a script, and sat around with 9 other comic writers, thunder on their faces over their witticism not making the cut? He was glad all those other fuckers were dead, and proved his burning desire to live and share with the world had been stronger than theirs. Lightweights of comedy, all. And see, that's what these young comics lack, a bit of fire in their bellies. Tough clubs full of miners just re-emerged from the pit, wanting only to slake a thirst, not listen to some dinner-jacketed, dicky-bowed smart-ass talking about what they've got waiting for them at home in the form of their wife or mother-in-law. This lot go to university and fall straight into television contracts. Their best comedy is splenetic, a bile spat across the room that picks people up from being slumped over their drink and shakes them silly, "Oh my aching sides," rather than tickling their ribs. It's called a punchline, for God's sakes, a blow to the guts that takes the wind out of you, not a pat on the back. See, true comedians knew their humour was a buffer between them and the world. Instinctively, they felt the planet wasn't set up right, and they needed to tilt it off its everyday axis. But they weren't entirely clear what it was that needed lancing. Well, they do now. It's bleeding death, isn't it? And death always has the last laugh. If only they could factor that into their hilarity from the outset. But then they probably wouldn't be wisecracking anymore. Wiser and more cracked in the head, probably. A good comedy is the gauze and iodine liberally applied to help drain the pus of a raw wound, to own it, defang and deplete its crippling power. Only eventually death's grinning visage can't be deflected anymore. The infirmities of the body tear the gauze away and expose it once again to putrescence. And laughter is the best medicine, until your failing body builds up total immunity to it. Your bile congeals inside you into gallstones. The man regards his Zimmer frame once again. If he were more august with the written rather than the extemporised word, he could make like a character out of a Samuel Beckett play, and bend down inside his steel frame and act as if it were a cage or a prison. Instead, it confers the illusion of mobility. him the tortoise in his metal shell here. He grips the handlebar with one shaking gnarled claw as it has to support his evanescent weight, while with the other he leans over to pick up his superannuated walking stick. He brandishes the medical cane above him with a shooting agony in his shoulder as the crutch raises above the horizontal. With the heavy rubber tip of the walking aid, he taps the shade over the central light of his room and sends it swinging. The bulb is too weak to yield the spotlight trail after him that he craves. Energy saving. Pah! To hell with it. They may all be sat there pissing themselves before he even enters the room, their hearing aids squealing with feedback. But there's still an audience in his old people's home to be entertained, goddammit. He would slay them tonight.